quickly revisit the subject of Daphne Barak. If you have not watched my other videos about her, I will catch you up to speed briefly in this one, but you can go to the playlist to see other research and other videos that I've done on Daphne Barak. But I really want to zero in on the trail of destruction that Daphne has left in her professional career, her wake of destruction that is unlike anything I've ever seen a journalist do. So let's just really quickly run down the list of what we know. We know that Daphne Barak is the cousin of the former prime minister of the blue and white state, Ehud Barak. We know that she currently lives in a home in California that was purchased in 2016 in cash by her cousin Ehud Barak, and they are both beneficiaries of the Barak family trust. And we know her cousin Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of the blue and white state, is a longtime associate of Jeffrey, was seen going in and out of his Manhattan mansion on multiple occasions, flew on his jet multiple times, and has been accused of R-word and SA by multiple victims that were swept into Jeffrey's ring, including Virginia Giuffre. We know that Daphne Barak is married to a man named Bill Gunasti, who is a Turkish political operative who has served as an advisor to 7 different prime ministers of Turkey. We also know that Daphne's husband Bill ran for mayor of Palm Springs back in 2015 and he lost terribly. We also know that Daphne has a problem with self-control as she got into a physical altercation with an audience member during her husband's 2015 mayoral debates, and she would ultimately be charged at fault for this incident. We also know that Daphne Barak is a known Mossad operative while also being one of the most well-connected journalists geopolitically as well as in the entertainment industry, and more on that in a moment. We know that Daphne, like her cousin Ehud Barak, is of Polish descent, and we know that she speaks of her parents in past tense, but there is absolutely zero publicly available information as to who this woman's parents are. But we do know that whoever her parents were are very well connected. We do know, due to Daphne's own writings, that growing up, a man named Yossi Harel was like a second father to her. Yossi Harel is a man who worked very closely with a man named David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister of the blue and white state. Yossi Harel was the commander of the ship who brought over the first big wave of soldiers and settlers in 1948 that would begin the non-stop siege of Palestine. Yossi Harel was easily one of the top 10 most influential figures in the creation of the blue and white state. There was even a movie made in 1960 called Exodus that centers around Yossi Harel's life in the very beginning of the existence of the blue and white state. In this movie, Yossi Harel's character was played by a man named Paul Newman, and part of this movie, according to Daphne Barak's own writings, was filmed in her childhood home. We know that this movie was filmed primarily in the blue and white state as well as Cyprus. Yet Daphne contradicts her own writings regularly, stating that she was born and raised in New York City, despite the fact that there is no existence of Daphne Barak or Daphne Barak, her birth name, existing in the United States until 1992. So hopefully that explains why it's been very tricky to figure out who this woman's parents are and how they are connected to all of this. Daphne Barak has regularly interviewed dictators. She has interviewed just about every influential figure in government within the blue and white state. She has interviewed Saudi royalty. She has interviewed dozens of United States senators, governors, and she is a close personal friend of the Trump family, and her husband spend a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago in present day. We also know that Daphne Barak works closely with Rupert Murdoch's daughter, Elizabeth Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch being the owner of Fox News and the former media rival of Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell. One of the projects that Daphne has collaborated with Rupert Murdoch's daughter was the documentary that they did together about Michael Jackson's parents, our son, Michael Jackson. More on that in a second. We also know that Daphne was the person who introduced Steve Bannon to Donald Trump, and Steve Bannon would go on to be one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, especially in his first term. We also know that Steve Bannon was a close advisor and friend to Jeffrey in the years leading up to his passing. Steve Bannon was admittedly trying to rehabilitate Jeffrey's image to make him palatable to the public and trying to secure interviews on 60 Minutes, and he has about 15 hours of coaching interviews that he has done with Jeffrey that he refuses to release to the public, even since Jeffrey has passed, due to attorney-client privilege, despite the fact that neither Steve Bannon nor Jeffrey were attorneys. Speaking of Jeffrey, we also know that Daphne Barak is a close and personal friend of Ghislaine Maxwell. Daphne has been writing about the Maxwell family under her birth name, Daphne Barak, since the late 80s. And we also know that Ghislaine Maxwell has really only ever done 2 public interviews, and both of those interviews, the interviewer was Daphne Barak. Shortly after Ghislaine Maxwell's father passed away, Ghislaine did an interview and the interviewer was Daphne Barak. And then again, when Ghislaine Maxwell was behind bars, she allowed Daphne Barak to come and interview her. And Daphne Barak has been a very big advocate for Ghislaine Maxwell's innocence and has been advocating to get her better living conditions in prison for a very long time, which we know have now been granted to Ghislaine. We also know that in 2023, Daphne Barak made a documentary surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell's siblings where they all pled for her to be released and tried to prove her innocence via this documentary that Daphne Barak created. So now that you are refamiliarized with Daphne, I want to give you 8 examples of how Daphne consistently leaves a wake of destruction in the lives of the people that she interviews, and how she attaches herself to the people she interviews and their families in a way that I've never seen a reporter or journalist ever do. Example number 1, Amy Winehouse. Daphne spent the last years of Amy Winehouse's life following her around, getting an intimate view at her day-to-day life, her artistry, and her battle with substances. The way that she went about this entire project was very exploitative, and she released her book Saving Amy the year before Amy Winehouse passed away, and would go on to release the documentary Saving Amy after Amy Winehouse passed away, despite her family pleading that Daphne would not release this because Amy was not alive to consent or approve any of the material in this documentary. And she would also go on to continue to allude on her social media that Amy Winehouse's father was essaying Amy while she was alive. And because that accusation didn't come from Amy, it just felt very exploitative, like her just trying to continue to make money off of clicks and views surrounding Amy Winehouse because of her connection to Amy. Example number 2, Whitney Houston. Do you guys remember that infamous wedding video that was leaked onto social media years ago? That was leaked by Daphne Barak. Daphne Barak deeply inserted herself into the life of Whitney Houston leading up to her passing. Doing this, Daphne also became very intertwined in the life of Whitney Houston's daughter, Bobbi Kristina. Daphne was allegedly one of the last people who Bobbi Kristina spoke to before she passed away, and according to Daphne, Bobbi Kristina shared that she was afraid that she was going to end up like her mother. Example number 3. Like I said in part 1, Elizabeth Murdoch and Daphne Barak worked together to create the documentary Our Son Michael Jackson that centered around the Jackson parents and siblings. Like always, Daphne inserted herself into the life of the Jackson family and built connections that she maintained for many years after the release of this documentary. Daphne, while working with the Jackson family, made it very clear and very obvious that she liked Joe Jackson a lot. When Joe Jackson passed away, her and Elizabeth Murdoch took to social media to share how sad they were about his passing. And one of the last known photos of Joe Jackson before he passed away is a photo with Daphne Barak. There was a strong sense through this documentary and throughout the friendship that Daphne held with the Jackson parents that she did not think Joe Jackson was a bad guy, when in reality Joe Jackson terrorized and traumatized his kids in a way that should have placed him under the prison. Example number 4, Daphne Barak was paid to run a years-long smear campaign against Britney to strengthen the idea publicly that Britney needed to remain in a conservatorship. She has also grown very close with Britney Spears' father, Jamie Spears, and even took to social media to wish him a happy Father's Day, despite the harm that he has inflicted upon his own child. There was some sort of a falling out between Kevin Federline and Daphne Barak shortly before Britney was released divorce from her conservatorship. Kevin basically flipped on her and called her a liar, most likely to help save his own skin from public fallout. Example number 5, in 2006, Daphne was sued by Mohammed Al-Fahid. You probably remember that this man's son, Dodi, was in the car with Princess Diana when she was struck and they both passed away. According to the lawsuit, Daphne sought out Mohammed Al-Fahid and lied and said that she was a correspondent with CBS and was filming an episode of 48 Hours to lure him into doing an exclusive interview with her. And keep in mind, even though that Daphne has, secured some of the most prestigious interviews in the entertainment world and in the political realm, domestically and internationally, Daphne has always been a gossip tabloid journalist and nothing more. There is no depth to her work. In present day, she and her husband regularly contribute to the Daily Mail, if that tells you anything. Mohammed Al-Fahid did win this $10 million lawsuit that he brought against Daphne Barak, but because she basically ignored all the legal proceedings, a judge never really forced her to pay the $10 million. There's a lot of lore in general to Mohammed Al-Fahid. I won't get into it all right now, but Mohammed Al-Fahid was the longtime business partner of one of Jeffrey's earliest clients from back in the 80s, Adnan Khashoggi, who was a Saudi billionaire and arms dealer who worked with Jeffrey back in the 80s and helped pave the way for Jeffrey to begin working in intelligence. Example number 6, Daphne Barak is the close and personal friend of the loyal ex-wife of Prince Andrew, Elizabeth Ferguson, and Elizabeth Ferguson remained extremely loyal to Prince Andrew when he was exposed for R-wording and essaying multiple of the victims who were involved in Jeffrey's ring, including Virginia Giuffre. Daphne and Elizabeth spent years trying to tarnish the names and the stories and the credibility of multiple victims of Jeffrey, especially the accusers who were accusing Prince Andrew of wrongdoing. And they did this by utilizing Daphne's power of media to write pieces that just tore down the victims in a really big way, including Virginia Giuffre. But at the same time, Daphne Barak tried to play both sides with Virginia. She has stated publicly that Virginia trusted her. Daphne has also shared that shortly before Virginia passed away, she had a conversation with Virginia, making one of Virginia's last public conversations to someone in the media being with Daphne Barak. Daphne would also write many articles validating her friend Elizabeth's hate of victims like Virginia, despite the fact that they were teenagers at the time they were victimized and doing the right thing by coming forward with their stories. Example number 7, the year after Mary Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s wife, allegedly took her own life, and the year before, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was seen partying at Ghislaine Maxwell's apartment, Daphne Barak made a documentary about the Kennedy family called Coming Home with the Kennedys. From that point on, Daphne Barak would remain very close to the Kennedy family, especially Cheryl Hines and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and it has been one of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s biggest supporters to be appointed to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Example number 8, Daphne has been very close to the Trump family for a very, very long time. When the Trump family was barred from operating charities due to the fact that they had stolen money donated to children with cancer and pocketed it for themselves, Daphne wrote a scathing article basically making the Trump family out to be victims in the situation when they were the ones who were stealing from children with cancer. Daphne also maintained a very close relationship with Ivana Trump all the way up into her passing. Currently has a close and personal friendship with one of Donald Trump's sisters. And those are just 8 examples. I could keep going. Aaron Carter. Daphne Barak interviewed Aaron Carter multiple times as a child into adulthood leading up to when he passed away. I don't really know what this pattern means, but the trail of destruction is noticeable. But I mean, we're dealing with a Mossad operative here, so I don't think we should expect anything less. But I do think it's very important that we are fully aware who the people are who are influencing much of this administration's roadmap, especially when they are connected to foreign intelligence. So that's all I have for you guys right now. I'm still continuing to dig into who Daphne Barak's parents are because I think that will be bombshell information because it is so well hidden, and I will continue to keep you guys updated.